Hi there, Reject Nation. I'm Greg Alba.
I'm John Humphrey.
We are going to talk about Marvel Sony's Spider-Man Far From Home. Mr. Stark. It's my Tom Holland. That's all I got.
Mr. Stark?
Mr. Fury. I don't We will be doing a spoiler talk for you guys because there's plenty of things to talk about. As a matter of fact, half tempted to just skip this non-spoiler review and just hop onto the spoiler talk because there's so many things that you can spoil that go on in this film, especially those post-credit scenes. Wow, a lot to talk about. Got Andrew Gordon coming by. I know you guys love him. Before we go into this, I want to say a special thank you to the folks over at Real D 3D and 4DX that did a combined screening for this, where you get to experience the 4DX motion of the chairs and the effects that you've heard us talk about countless times. I always hit them up for the screen. I hit them up if they have a screening going on. And then, of course, the Real D 3D, a lot of eye-popping visuals, more here than in Homecoming, some sequences we can't get into, but in 3D, they really, really stood out. Because from watching the trailers, I'm like, okay, well, I'm sure this will be a fine 3D movie, but it ended up being a lot more worth it than I initially thought, because there's a lot they left out of the trailers that I thought was great here. But let's talk about the actual movie here. Let's take this seriously.
Sucked, I hate it.
It is the worst Marvel movie.
Totally ruins the continuity. Craps all over the legacy of Endgame. No.
This movie, I think it's great. I liked it a lot more. I don't know if I liked it a lot more. Yeah, I liked it a lot more. I've decided I like it a lot more.
You heard it first.
Spider-Man Homecoming. My emotions have caught up to me. John, tell him what the movie's about.
The movie is about, wouldn't you know it, Peter struggling to balance his personal life with his Spider-Man life as his class prepares to take a trip across Europe. However, there's an elementals attack going on throughout Europe, and Mysterio has stepped in to try and fight. So amid all that, here's Nick Fury coming to pull Spider-Man into the game. Spider-Man doesn't want to be a part of the game, and Spider-Man Far From Home begins.
Let's get this out of the way. John, how would you say Tom Holland is in the movie?
Oh, well, actually, I mean, Tom Holland, he's one of the most wonderful characters to come to screen.
Tom Holland's great in this movie. He continues and builds upon, I think, the goodwill he built in that first, in Homecoming, because, I mean, I know for a lot of people he has taken up the mantle as being the definitive Peter Parker on screen. For me, I still do have attachments to Tobey Maguire and other people, but I think
Garfield?
No, but I'm keeping like the cartoon portrayals in mind, just keeping the door open for some of those things. I think that Tom Holland has all those charms from Homecoming here, but with an added layer of emotional nuance and emotional heft that he has to carry through this movie, that oddly enough I felt the coming of age aspects even harder in this one than the previous. So I thought he did a terrific job.
Apparently this moment doesn't have audio of where I was talking about a specific thing with Tom Holland's performance, but I really do want to mention that I think the gravitas that he gives, especially in the second half of this, real emotional intensity and paranoia, I found to be very gripping, and I love the weight he provided. Anyway, back to what's actually captured in audio. Even though the stakes are a lot bigger here than in Homecoming, I found the inner conflict more relatable, and I think
more personal somehow.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the credit goes to the immediacy of Peter Parker's main obstacle here, which is he really just wants to connect with MJ.
Yeah.
And that's something I think all of us can connect with, is wanting to, hook up with
Connect
a black
with
girl.
MJ?
Oh, no. The idea of like you really want to woo someone and you're nervous about it, and you have that.
You want to come up with the perfect moment.
Yeah, exactly. So you have that element here. I think the chemistry between Peter Parker and MJ is the biggest heart of the movie.
Yeah.
I love them together. I was rooting for them. I fell in love with their like romantic relationship that they were forming here. And I think you guys will too, and if you've already seen it, you probably will agree with me. They were great. Zendaya gets a lot more to do and gets to shine way more. While the theme of him having to balance his personal life and being Spider-Man is very familiar, it still feels really fresh in this specific take because it's very much akin to this specific interpretation we have of Spider-Man. Also, the after effects of Endgame are very much felt. They're establishing a sort of world that's developed since, post Endgame, post Tony Stark and all that,
Yeah.
which I thought they handled really well and added a lot of levity and humor to a lot of the dramatic weight of the situation. Wasn't expecting this movie to fully do, and I thought they did it pretty well. That being said, in terms of just the movie alone, I think the first half of this movie is fine. I think it's really fun. It's really cute. It's a high school teen movie, pretty much, with some Spider-Man stuff in there. It's really charming, but there was nothing really in it in the first half that I was like, okay, this is your follow-up to Endgame. All right, sure, this is passable. Yeah.
I feel like the first half could have used a couple more scenes to maybe give it just a touch more weight to support itself, because it doesn't feel quite as substantial as when the movie truly kicks in about halfway through.
Well, I think on a repeat viewing, I might enjoy it more, especially being aware of where it's going to be going in its second half. This film really has a pretty distinct two halves. There's a very pivotal moment where you're like, okay, we have entered the second half of the film. And I think for me, even saying that, you might be able to tell when you're entering the second half of the film.
Well, that's the thing. Is I feel like maybe with a couple more scenes, I wouldn't have been anticipating there being such a shift, but we won't get into that.
We can't get into any of the second half, unfortunately.
Which is awesome, which I really do hope is a future thing for Marvel, where like all the trailers are just, this is all the first half of the movie, and you have no idea what's coming at you, because there are a lot of surprises here that are really thrilling.
Yeah, because I think the first half still is a good build up to what you're going to get where in the second half it gets really intense, very gripping. The humor doesn't go away. In fact, I think it kind of gets funnier. Because of how intense everything becomes.
And the way that they're able to effectively draw the kind of bumper cars of all the different things he's trying to manage at once, because it is just a stressful. It kind of cures the problem that a lot of Spider-Man and superhero movies have of being bloated, because Peter is overwhelmed with all the things he's trying to take on. So it makes a lot of sense. It smooths the plot. It streamlines the plot.
Yeah, and there are scenes in the second half visually that I will not leave my mind. Whenever I flash to this movie, I think of certain keynote moments between Mysterio and Spider-Man that I cannot tell you about.
That are just so
but it was
dazzling.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I audibly said it, and I heard people around me saying a variety of wow, oh my God,
and
after these moments occurred.
Yeah, and that's part of the magic, I think, of the MCU especially, is the way they've been able to realize those things, because, you can... You can argue that, in a lot of these stories, there are similar powers between the heroes and the villains and whatnot. A lot lately, it seems like they are bringing in interesting filmmaking techniques and visual elements with their characters.
True.
And that keeps things really fresh. So, like Mysterio, he's got some amazing visual realization, but also Jake Gyllenhaal's portrayal is terrific.
I feel like with Michael Keaton as Vulture, Michael Keaton really elevated that role. While I think Jake Gyllenhaal can't go into anything, what he does with the Mysterio character is special, but I also felt the writing really cared a hell of a lot.
Yes, it did.
When I think of Spider-Man Far From Home, I also view it as Mysterio's movie as well. And that's probably a big difference as opposed to Homecoming, which is pretty much just the Peter Parker Spider-Man movie. I like how it managed to get bigger but still feel pretty much contained. And I can't go into it because of spoilers, but
they're traveling Europe. There are a lot of different locations. There is some pretty destructive action, and yet it doesn't feel like a world-ending apocalypse. And it's funny, it highlighted to me the juxtaposition of the theme that Peter wants to be a neighborhood Spider-Man and not so much an Avenger this time, and I think the movie again encapsulates that scale too.
The action in here is much better than Homecoming.
Feels more confident.
There are sequences in here that reminded me more of the Raimi days. There's no Spider-Man fight scene in Homecoming that really stands out to me. And then here, there are shots and sweeping epic moments where I was just like, wow, cool. That looks awesome. Look at him go.
And they really bring those breathtaking, imaginative comic book action ideas to life, or cartoon ideas to life.
And I like the evolution of his powers and what they're and how they're choosing to handle him growing into an ultimate Spider-Man, as opposed to he's got every power equipped. Like as you saw in Infinity War, they teased the spider senses. Won't say much other than that's a thing that comes into play.
And I like that approach too for this, that his powers may develop and grow over time, because that just makes things more interesting
as he grows as a character too. There's this storyline with Ned that's I thought was really funny. I think some people have complained about it. I personally thought it was really funny how they executed it.
Yeah, I agree. I can see, I guess, how some people might think it's kind of a one-note gag that repeats a whole lot.
Because Ned's not really a character in here.
Yeah, he doesn't really get an
sacrifice
emotional
for this
storyline.
bit.
Yeah. There are a few things that sort of become that, but
you can't flesh out both Ned and MJ in the same movie.
Yeah.
Ned gets Homecoming, MJ gets Far From Home.
Well, and that's one of those things that in the give and take of the movie,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's not absolutely important that we do that, and you do appreciate the teen comedy elements that also kind of genre splices you into. Yeah,
Nick Fury, he's doing his thing.
He's doing his Nick Fury thing.
He's good.
Some of his best lines are probably in the trailer.
Yeah, Nick Fury's good.
Kobe Smulders is there.
Yeah,
Maria Hill is there.
I have an issue with the way they handle Aunt May.
Yes.
We'll talk about it in our spoiler review.
Yes.
I have an issue. I don't feel like she's much of a character when she had plenty of scenes where she could have been.
Yeah.
And I think Colby Smulders didn't want to be in this movie.
I couldn't tell. Yeah, it's strange because she is the one character who shows up more than a lot of people and doesn't get that much to do.
She has like zero emotion in this movie.
Like, she's clearly a badass. She's like Nick Fury's right hand. Like, let her do some stuff or something.
I don't know if it was a choice based off some stuff that happens in the movie, but yeah, I just felt like she didn't want to be there.
Yeah, and it is kind of a detriment, I think, at least less in this movie than in Homecoming, but Peter's family life is kind of just removed. I know we've talked about this before. You don't really feel like there's any kind of presence of Uncle Ben, and so that does leave his Aunt May relationship also kind of flailing.
I think because they just don't want to even acknowledge it. My issue with it, basically, like, this isn't a spoiler. My issue with it is now in Homecoming, they have that cliffhanger with, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then she finds out he's Spider-Man.
You
and then
see it in this trailer,
there's the Endgame gap and everything in Infinity War, like all that time span of whatever happened in their relationship. But I don't know, there's like no depth or weight to the dynamics in their relationship. She's still essentially just hot aunt, and I'm annoyed by that. If anything, she seems more of a support to enhance the Happy Hogan character, who Jon Favreau's great in the movie.
Yeah. Aunt May is kind of reduced to that, just a punchline.
I kind of don't get the character.
Yeah, and you it's in the trailer. You fast forward to the point where she's like pimping Spider-Man out all over town.
That's what she does,
So it's a little odd that way.
It's like she seems to have no awareness that that's still your nephew and he's 16 years old. Yeah,
I'm like, you don't act like a guardian in any way. Yeah, overall, I mean, this movie definitely delivered on being as heartwarming and kind of fun as Homecoming is, but also like heavy to a degree, appropriately following Endgame, and also setting up some really wonderful surprises and some really wonderful things for the future. So yeah, I was pretty dazzled, and I really enjoyed this most of the time.
There's post-credits. These are like must-see post-credits.
They are both, yeah.
I couldn't believe how many people left. Have you never been to a Marvel movie?
Yeah.
And the thing is, these post-credit scenes are not just like fun things. They're essential post-credit scenes.
They really are.
The weird part is like the first post-credit scene is a little bit bigger than the whole movie that we watched.
It's more shocking than anything else that happens.
Yeah, and I heard that, and then I watched it, and I'm like, oh, wow, that is crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What?
And no matter how many times people prep me for something shocking, I did not predict it, and I don't think you will either. This movie has a lot of heart. Definitely recommend it. It's not just some Ant-Man and the Wasp situation of like, all right, let's get back to some fun. No, I think this is a necessary movie for the MCU, and I think it's a great way to conclude things after Endgame, surprisingly. That's probably one of the bigger surprises. Like, this perfectly works.
Yeah, it's a nice ribbon on it all.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, you see Spider-Man Far From Home. Keep a lookout for our spoiler review. Excited to be doing that. You guys can subscribe to The Real Rejects. Click that notification bell. Which Spider-Man villain do you want to see appear? And make sure to go watch some Real D, 3D, or 4DX, or both if you can.